want to give my bit on D8 and to cover probably the two most talked about interviews, which is Steve Jobs and Balmer. Let me first start off with Steve Jobs on the flash questions. I much preferred the more business approach in saying, look, Adobe had their chance, we waited for them to produce something, they did not, we moved on. Really, that is as succinct as it can get, and none of the other technical things that I've already talked about on my other vid that were more of the pot calling the kettle black needed to be in the letter. There is no better measure of saying, hey, if the people really want Flash that bad, they'll buy the products that have Flash on it. Right now, they're buying Apple products. That statement, however, will be tested because the beta version of what is to be Mobile Flash is now coming out and Android is beginning deployment. So the time on when Adobe finally ever gets out of beta, whenever that may be, and it gets deployed on Android, will be something to watch. But there's no other better answer to say, hey, the markets will decide. I liked the iAd questions. Now, I know that Jobs is personally heated on a lot of that, going to these analytic firms and things like that. But the audience member who asked the question really had a valid point. And I think that Jobs backtracked a bit in his statement, saying when he finally comes down from being pissed off that they will go and talk to these firms, but now is not the time. I really loved the section where Jobs was talking about television, and I understand all of his points. And I am completely dumb on this topic, but I know what I would like, and I've had some ideas with it, which could completely be off, and if anybody's in this kind of market, certainly can correct me on this. But I can tell you, I've spent years in trying to get rid of these rental fees, $10 here a month, and I just hate cable box subscription fees. I am that customer that does want to contact TiVo or whomever and say, I just want to buy a box one time, and that's the end of it. I don't want to pay rental fees. I don't want it to go on forever and paying $5, $7, $10. I get so annoyed at that. It's one of my huge pet peeves. I've explored just about every type of internet streaming media that have television channels and some participating what we dub as cable channels that go out. And then we've come up with methods using even Linux and Myth TV to my setup now with the Mac Mini, and trying to pump over to all my end monitors, if you want to call it, whether it's a television or a computer, from this localized hub that I have that's going out. I've explored trying to minimize license fees by going with cable cards and trying to make them work with video cards, and then trying to have multiple stream inputs and outputs so that multiple recordings can happen, so on and so forth. Uverse has done well in allowing for input and output concurrently, where you can record up to 4 at one time. I've explored lots and lots of options to try to escape, which Jobs may say bringing it to market, but man, break the hold that the market has, is this stale flavor. And this is some of the ideas that and I could be completely way off on. But I'll make an analogy to what Apple's done with iTunes and some other market fronts that have taken music and broken that CD album into finally 99-cent songs, or 129, whatever it is now. But they've broken the album lock that it had on the music industry. I don't know if any of you are in the same boat as myself, but boy, did I hate having to buy an album just to get one song. And it was a godsend to have a way now just to buy that one song. Well, I look at cable the same way. Why not go to the channels themselves and make it just a basket of channels? No more of these packages. I am so tired of, you can get the sport package, and you get our package 200 and package 250 and ultimate packages. Get them out of me. ooh, I get really infuriated with the whole model of all that stuff. I want to have this channel, this channel, this channel, and this channel, and pay independent fees for them. And liken it to the iTunes store of breaking the album, we'll break those packages, break the cable stronghold that it has, and how it's evolved from bringing great reception to all this now, and premium stations and da-da-da-da. No. I want a store where I can pick channels, make my own subscriptions, and that's it. And maybe each channel, broadcaster or what have you, has to be contacted specifically and be willing to participate in, I don't know what the legal ramifications are, if there's contracts with cable companies and its exclusivity and all these other things. Well, when those contracts come out, boom, get in there and start making negotiations and make a sweet enough deal to say, well, they're going to be willing to go back to the cable companies and say, no, we're going to have to leave part of the contract open to where we're going to participate on this new model. And finally give us a way to say, yep, I'm having this channel, and this channel, and that's it, and that's what I'm paying, and be done with me. I don't want to have your rental boxes. I don't want to have these crazy packages where I don't even watch half the damn channels on there. Man, Apple and Jobs, if you could use your magic in your, what people dub the force field bubble, and convince some sort of market to do that, boy, that would be fantastic, at least in my opinion. And of course, people could laugh at me, and everybody likes what they have, but that's me as a consumer, and that's what I would like to shoot for. Then there is the whole AT&T deal. And I'm surprised that the guy who asked the question was from Houston. I'm in Houston, and I can tell you when I first got the iPhone, I couldn't have a conversation that lasted longer than 5 minutes, and I'd have dropped calls. Right now, after, I forget what it was it version 3? OS 3 that came out for the iPhone? I don't have dropped calls like I did anywhere near what was experienced when I first got the iPhone. Very seldomly. But there are patches, of course, in my city where it just drops. It's like a dead zone. But I don't have dropped calls now like there was when I first got the iPhone. It was a huge problem. I really participated a lot in the Apple support forums and trying to say what is going on with these dropped calls. I mean, this is, I can't even use it as a phone, for crying out loud. AT&T's got great data here if you're in the area, but you know, I hear people that are on Sprint networks and Verizon, and they have great things to say, and there are people that have negative things to say. What I will say negative about AT&T is that, boy, were they slow in hurting the iPhone's features that they were responsible for, like MMS and tethering, and when is Wi-Fi hotspot going to come? And I just love the whole new pricing model. Of course, for people that say, well, look, it's $5 cheaper. And most people don't use more than 2 gigs. Look, the way I mathematically break it down is that a gig used to cost me $6. $6 per gig if I wanted to have 5. The new pricing model is $11 per gig to obtain 5 gigs. I don't care how you want to break it down, or wow, there's a lower entry price cost. That is the price of a gigabyte. End of story. We have gone from $6 a gigabyte to $11 a gigabyte. Now, what happens when Wi-Fi hotspot comes out? Oh, I hear all these extra charges with tethering and la-da-da-da. Good Lord. I do know that I have read in many telecom business magazines that, yes, there's great strain on the data networks and things like that, and yada, yada, yada. Okay, fine. And now we're having WiMAX and LTE that are bringing a whole new band so we can have data. And maybe we can be done with all this hoopla and packaging and good Lord, you can't tether without paying $25, and oh, if you want that Wi-Fi hotspot, that's another $25 right there. And finally, the last topic I want to cover is, well, PCs are trucks, and what's going to happen to the PC, and Jobs thinking the PC is going to go away. That part I actually agree with Balmer that the architecture underneath is what dictates it, and form factors come and go. That's why there's the beauty of the iMac, the Mac Mini, towers, liquid-cooled machines, what have you. Essentially, though, the architecture and the power that we can put behind the architecture dictates the form factor in the end. If we can get enough power and on batteries to get the same computing power as what we have in larger machines by form factor, then you're going to see computing, but still it will still be a personal computer, change form factor. I myself could care less if it's a little device the size of this remote that I can put on my desk and it projects a hologram for a monitor. But that's the key. Is I believe, at least, and I'm going to speak for myself and maybe some others that will agree with me, is that screen real estate and the form factor of what I can work with in my screen real estate is extremely critical. And I know that Jobs spoke about he'd like to have the keyboard and get rid of the keyboard and have it within the screen. That comes at a price of screen real estate, which I think Bill Gates at D5 was talking about, how people would just love to have this huge area of screen and then roll it and then roll it right back up to a smaller form factor. So I agree with Balmer's assessment in saying it's still going to be a PC in a different form factor, and that is controlled by what we can put in the internals in terms of how we can supply power to it and the actual power of the architecture we can deliver in computing power. Then we get into Balmer and talking about mobile phones. The guy certainly has a more lackadaisical approach to things, but he is at least willing to admit that they missed an entire cycle, which is true. They're really absent in the current market, and I think it's going to be a challenge for Windows Mobile to assert themselves. Now, people argue against me with that and saying, well, they already do really have a large market that are still using the older Windows Mobile devices, and that's true. But Android is hot and heavy, iPhone is hot and heavy, and BlackBerry definitely responds to the present market, whether it's in Android's form, iPhone form, or Windows Mobile. And I really hats off to BlackBerry, because they do have a large retail consumer base that do purchase BlackBerries alongside enterprise, and Balmer recognizes that, and I think that's part of the reason why I'm, at least in the commercials, I'm seeing more of the Windows Mobile 7 addressing a lot of the consumer retail side of things. It still remains to be seen, but I'm glad that Balmer admits that they missed a cycle. The other side of that is I like where they were talking about Google and Google's approach. Well, you have two deals that's going on. You have Chrome and then you have Android. And I like the assessment of that. Well, application targeting a device versus Chrome being device neutral. The demographic and consumers look at a phone very different. They can have a device and then just pick their flavor of operating system that they're going to do. It's plausible. Quite frankly, you can get over-the-air updates and whole operating system updates like on my Palm Pre versus like with my iPhone, which is still very much hardwired to iTunes and it being controlled from that node aspect. It could happen. Maybe they should have used a Nexus 1 as a means of showing that, hey, you can put Chrome, you can put this, and it doesn't matter the device. You just have an operating system device neutral just going to run on your device. So, very interesting conversation on how Balmer approached it and how Ozzy approached it, and realizing the two different approaches. I did enjoy Balmer calling Google a behemoth. It takes one to know one. And then the whole antitrust deal with the audience question and dealing, well, what is your advice for Apple, so on and so forth. Anyway, that's all I have so far on the D8 conference. As more get interviewed and I get more requests to give my opinions, I'll be happy to make a video. Thanks for watching.